What is up, guys? Today I wanted to go over some of the cheaper non-EX decks you can run in the new PvP event and get wins very reliably.
What's up, guys? It's me, Mochi. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so I can eat.
So the first deck I want to cover, I've already covered in my other best decks videos, which included EX decks, that is the Wheezing, Scolipede, and Taurus deck. So this is a very powerful deck at the moment. It is currently winning and clearing tournaments. So to pull the combination off, you effectively have your Wheezing on field, you use Gas Leak. At that point, you would Koga Wheezing off field, put your Scolipede from the bench onto the field, activate its ability Venoshock, which deals 120 damage, which is the perfect amount with the poison tick to kill Celebi, to kill Starmie, to kill a few others around that 130 HP range, including the new Mute EX. So this is a very good deck and it's very good against the current meta. Taurus adds a little bit of a depth and backup plan to this deck because Taurus has the Fighting Tackle move, which does 120 damage to EX Pokemon. Now, one of the risks running Taurus is if you get stuck with Taurus as your starting mon, it's very hard to get off the field with 2 retreat cost, and he only does 40 damage to non-EX mons. So this is why you run 2 Leaf in this deck, because Leaf can not only be used to get Coughing off the field if you don't draw Koga, but it's also a safe retreat for Taurus, who is a 2 retreat cost. The next deck will come as no surprise given the current prevalence of the Celebi deck. This is one of the better decks going at the moment. The next deck I want to talk about is the Blaine aggro deck. I give Scolipede the slight edge in the current meta because I think it's better against other meta decks, but Blaine is definitely one of the best decks against Celebi. Now, the thing with this deck is it's built around Ninetales. We run one of each Rapidash, so the old Rapidash and the new Rapidash, because it really just depends on your situation. The old Rapidash is a consistent 40 damage for 1 energy, whereas the new one is a 40 damage flat, but maybe an extra 60 damage if you can flip our heads, but it's a 2 energy cost. So having both Rapidashes gives you some variation and gives you the ability to pick and choose which one suits the situation you're currently in. Farfetch'd will never not be a good card in the early game. If you get Farfetch'd on the field dealing 40 damage really quickly, it can definitely spook a lot of decks, particularly if you're facing a Celebi deck and all they manage to put on the field is their Snivy. You can really do a lot of damage and stall their momentum. The rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. 2 Blaines, a Giovanni, a Sabrina, a blue, which is actually quite useful tech with the HP pools here. 100 HP is a common damage amount, so blue can definitely save you. Low retreat cost mons, so you just run 2x speeds, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 Professor Oaks. The idea here is overwhelming aggression. You take them out before they can set up. And this works against a lot of decks, but you will fall flat against some decks like Pikachu or Starmie if they get the probably turn 2. If you get turn 2 with this deck, I would say you win like 70% of the time. If you get turn 1, I would say this deck can be a little bit iffy. Now, the next one functions very similarly to the Blaine deck, but I call this the ground aggro deck. So the ideal scenario here is you're getting your Promo Mankey or your Sandshrew on field pretty early, and you're building up your Sandslash or Primeape. Promo Mankey and Primeape combo very well. They do 130 damage in 2 turns because Promo Mankey does 30, it self-damages, Primeape goes on top of Mankey, and it boosts his fight back from 40 damage up to 100. So against Celebi and Mew, again, you can take them out very quickly in a couple of turns. Sandslash and Sandshrew are quite good, and they also spread weakness. So Marshadow and Primeape are all weak to Psychic, but Sandslash is weak to Grass. So it does help you a little bit too against some of those Psychic decks. Sandslash is also a pretty strong and pretty fast damage dealing mon at only 2 energy cost for Slash. 70 damage a turn is pretty damn crazy. And the whole idea here is that you're dealing that massive damage early with Primeape and Sandslash. I say massive relative to the turn they come out. And then if they do go down, you've got a Marshadow ready and waiting on your bench to flip in and do 100 damage with Revenge. So Marshadow in isolation is pretty bad if it gets stuck on your field, having only a 40 power attack. So running the 2x speeds here is pretty essential. You don't want Marshadow to be on your field because 40 damage isn't going to do much to anything. The rest of the deck again is pretty straightforward. It runs 2 Pokeballs, 2 Professor Oaks, 2 Sabrinas, 1 Geo, and 1 Blue. Really, you can kind of play with the trainers. If you want to run a couple of potions, you're welcome to, but I think in this sort of deck, you're more about aggression than anything. Next up is not a new deck at all, but is one of the stronger Dragonite variations. So this is Dragonite plus Wheezing plus Kangaskhan. Everyone knows the idea of this deck is basically to stall as long as you can while you build your Dragonite safely on the bench. Kangaskhan can do that and do early game damage, and so can Wheezing. So they're 2 very good Pokemon to combine, and it works quite well. Now, Koga is in this deck, of course, to help you stall with your Wheezing. Koga gets your Wheezing off field and get a fresh one on, so the more you can stall, the better. So Koga and Wheezing are a fantastic stalling mechanism. Then you're running Giovanni, Sabrina, X-Speed, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 Professors Researchers. Now, I think this deck list is a little bit dated. I would probably switch out X-Speed for Leaf, given Leaf is a new card and everything in this deck is a high retreat cost. That's one change I would make. Other than that, this is a pretty solid deck, and I think it's just pretty fitting, and I think it works very well. Giovanni is also very essential to this deck. If you think of all the times you've got a Pokemon on 60 HP on the bench, adding that Giovanni guarantees a 60 damage roll with Draco Meteor if it splits off into that Pokemon, which can secure you the kill, which can win you the game. The Giovanni is actually a very important card for a Dragonite deck, in my opinion. The final deck I want to talk about is not original to me, but I have seen this floating around. I think it's quite a cool and unique deck. I have played with it quite a bit, and it is a very cool deck. So the idea here is you have Druddigon up front tanking while you build your Greninja. Greninja, when it comes on, and plus Druddigon doing the 20 damage rough skin, enables you to use Water Shuriken to chip away at enemies, and then Bruxish can come on and do massive damage, because Bruxish does 70 damage per hit if the enemy Pokemon has any damage done to it. So Greninja can fill this role by damaging from the bench, and Bruxish can do massive damage to the on-field active. At the same time, in the early game, Druddigon is dealing damage with rough skin passively, which means when Bruxish is ready, you can switch Bruxish in, and then you can do 70 damage to the active. Now, Leaf is pretty important in this deck. So 1 Leaf, you probably could roll 2 Leaf here just for the Druddigon, and maybe 1x speed. You could probably flip that around. I like running 1 Leaf 2x speeds just because of the other mon retreat costs are quite low, but if you do get Druddigon stuck on the field, Leaf can be quite useful. Leaf also burns the supporter slot, so preferably I think you want to save that for your Sabrinas, because that could be quite clutch in the late game. But overall, we run 2 Sabrinas, 2 Oaks, 2 Pokeballs, the 2x speeds I mentioned, and just a potion. Again, you could drop potion and just run 2 Leaves and 2x speed. That's another option. But the concept behind this deck is pretty fun and pretty interesting. So Bruxish is really doing most of the heavy lifting. But if Bruxish does go down, you still have Greninja built on your bench to do 60 damage with Mist Slash plus 20 from Water Shuriken. So this deck is pretty interesting, and I think it's quite good. I've played it a bit in some of the ranked games, and I probably win like I don't know, like 60 to 70% of the games. It just depends what you're facing. I mean, I've only got a small sample size to go off. Anyway, guys, that is going to be the video. Just a really quick one going over some of the cheaper decks you can run and win consistently in the new PvP event. The Scolipede, the Blaine, they're all very good decks. All 5 of them are pretty solid decks, and trust me, you will get wins with them. If you've got the ability to add some EXs in, then there probably are some slightly better decks. With the exception, I think Scolipede, and I think Scolipede is an S tier deck, well, an A tier deck, and Blaine is like a B+ to A tier deck currently, but if you have to run them, they're very good decks. So if you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification before the next one. Till next time, catch you later.